This is the Breakaway Podcast, presented by the National Bird Hunters Association. The NBHA's Breakaway Podcast is brought to you by Purina Pro Plan, fine-tuned nutrition to promote strength and stamina in the canine athlete and longest-standing supporter of the sport of field trialing nationwide. You can fuel your champion with Purina Pro Plan using various physical and online retailers nationwide found wherever pet food is sold. Purina Pro Plan, fuel the champion within. Garmin, delivering innovative GPS-enabled technology across diverse markets, including sports and fitness, outdoor recreation, marine, automotive, and aviation. Garmin, engineered on the inside for life on the outside. Gundog Supply, the leader in training collars, tracking collars, and so much more. Fast, friendly service, great customer support, and the newest gun dog products on the market. Gundog Supply, we train our dogs with the products we sell. Mule brand clothing and apparel, outdoor clothing for all sorts of environments and conditions. From hunters in briars and wading creeks to forestry personnel, farmers, motorcycle riders, and utility workers, Mule is clothing for hunters, made by hunters for over 38 years. Find your Mule brand gear at www.okidogsupply.com. Gun Dog Central. Gun Dog Central is a centralized location for finding your next dog, whether it be a pointing dog, retriever, flusher, versatile breed, hound, or even terrier, you name it. Gun Dog Central is the place to find your next canine athlete. To find your next champion, visit them at www.gundogcentral.com. onX Hunt, the #1 hunting GPS app. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. onX Hunt, know where you stand. And Park Cities Quail Coalition. Park Cities Quail Coalition is a nonprofit organization run 100% by volunteers who are passionate about sporting traditions and determined to make it available to future generations by working to sustain and restore huntable wild quail populations, to encourage and educate interested youth, and to celebrate the quail hunting heritage. Welcome back for the 7th episode of the Breakaway Podcast. I'm once again your host, Joe Hopkins. So glad that you've tuned in. And if you enjoy this podcast, or even if you're listening for the first time, please take the time to tell a friend, like, subscribe, and review the channel to help grow and promote the podcast and the sport of field trialing that we all love. As we approach this Thanksgiving holiday, I just want to take a moment and thank you, the listener, and all of the NBHA family and patrons throughout the country for not only making this podcast what it is, but for supporting field trials nationwide. Our game, as it moves into the future, we need to stop at times and remember to give thanks to our great and powerful God for providing us these wonderful animals and these landscapes to enjoy them in, and the folks that have gone before us, paving the way for our heritage, and the people that we come in contact with today that help mold and shape our sport and our lives, so to speak. So somewhere within your Thanksgiving holiday, please stop and give thanks for this community and what this game means to you. Our guest this episode is Crouse Kennel's team member, Quail Invitational Director, AFTCA Region 4 Secretary, field trial competitor, breeder, and all-around supermom, Miss Mary Sue Schalk from Princeton, Kentucky. Mary Sue hails from a family pedigree steeped in field trial history while being a large part of the fabric of the West Kentucky field trial scene for many decades. Along with her father, Mike Crouse, Mary Sue operates the competition and breeding unit known as Crouse Kennels, with focus on turning out high-caliber pointers, setters, and cocker spaniels for the most discerning and demanding of sportsmen and women, whether you are looking for a top-notch field trial prospect or your next couch companion. Administratively, Mary Sue is responsible for a large part of the structure and running of the Region 4 of the Amateur Field Trial Clubs of America, along with several other additional field trial clubs, while also engineering and directing one of the most coveted and long-standing field trials on the all-age horseback circuit, the Quail Invitational, which will take place this month on November 25th at the West Kentucky Wildlife Management Area. Although the list of field trial hats Mary Sue wears is long, the most important hats she dons are that of being a mother and a wife as well. well. Integral to the operation, her husband Matt Schalk and 3-year-old daughter Anna Catherine step right into the lifestyle, not only assisting in overall day-to-day things, but they help enrich the labors of love necessary to build an operation that's truly a family affair. But before we get to our guest for this episode, let's go around the field trial world. In NBHA news, the West Kentucky Field Trial Club held their first ever walking field trial so graciously under the NBHA banner at their personal grounds at Crouse Kennels in Dixon, Kentucky. And in the open shooting dog stakes, it was setter female Stardust Outcast Coco taking first place for owner Sean Williams, handled by Outcast Kennels professional James Cleve. And in second, a German short-haired pointer named Duke, owned and handled by Upland Addiction's Judd Woodward. And in third place, it's Mike Fox with his red setter female Foxy Aberlina rounding out the placements. On the amateur shooting dog stakes, it was another red setter female for Mike Fox, but this time Foxy Lady Sadie taking first place, and in second place, Joseph and Brittany Hopkins' ultra-consistent setter male All Out, and rounding out the placements in third was Gary Vitale and his setter male Vitale's grouse ringer Pappy. The West Stark Field Trial Club, led by Mr. Glenn Cumbie, held their fall trial on October 21st in Booneville, Arkansas, and the winners of the open shooting dog stake was Hawk, handled by Glenn Cumbie, second place Kate, handled by Kenny Snow, and third Jack, handled by Jerry Snow. The 2023-2024 National Bird Hunters Association National Amateur Championship concluded at the Wright family's Redwood Farm in Covington, Indiana, with a total of 38 entries, and making his final bid under the whistle of handler and owner David Cates, champion Immersed Show Me Mo 2 was crowned this year's National Amateur Champion. And the runner-up champion was crowned in a pointer male and consistent runner and competitor High Rollins Gone and Done It for owner and handler Warren Parent. On to the horseback action. The 2023 Alabama Open Shooting Dog Championship saw this year's champion named Calico's Sky's the Limit, handled by Mike Tracy and owned by Alan Linder and Muriel and William Prim. Pointer female Lawless Georgie Girl, owned and handled by Jim Lawless of Illinois, takes the 2023 Region 17 Amateur All-Age Championship out at the Radcliffe Ranch in Dexter, Kansas, and with runner-up champion being named H.P. Cottonmouth, a pointer male, owned and handled by Ronnie Shoemaker of Missouri. The Carolina All-Age and Derby Jamboree finished its long run with the National Pheasant Championship, and this year's winner was champion Game Surge, owned and handled by Dr. Fred Corder, and runner-up champion being awarded to Aaron's Perfect Storm, owned by Brad Woody and handled by Luke Eisenhart. On to the Grouse Woods. The 79th rendition of the Grand National Grouse Futurity concluded at the Gladwin Field Trial Grounds in Meredith, Wisconsin, with Mohawk Miss You, a pointer female bred by Gary Winall, owned by Bill McFadden and handled by John Stoljatis, taking top honors. In second place, Scotland's Ponderosa Belle, a setter female bred by Brian Wood, owned by Scott and Lori Johnson, handled by Scott Foreman, taking second. And in third place, it was Jules Creek Oakley, a pointer male bred by John McKillop, owned and handled by Jeff Sullivan. And rounding out the placements in fourth was Max Sullivan, a setter male owned by Leanne Parnell and handled by Tammy Chafee. And the most coveted title in the Grouse Woods is the Grand National Grouse Championship, which came to a close at the Gladwin Field Trial Grounds. And this year's winner was Ralphie's Chase Hill Rip, a pointer male owned by Brian Ralph and handled by John Stoljatis, with runner-up champion being called Over the Hill Mary for owner and handler Rod Lean. And in maybe an unprecedented feat accomplished by handler John Stoljatis, John has handled in the same year the Grand National Grouse Puppy Classic winner with Chase Hill Snoop Dogg, the Grand National Grouse and Woodcock Invitational winner in Chase Hill Poison Ivy, the Grand National Grouse Futurity winner in Mohawk Mill Miss You, and now the Grand National Grouse champion in Ralphie's Chase Hill Rip. Congratulations, John. Another walking field trial news, the coveted AFTCA National Walking Shooting Dog Championship saw Allie Wood's 11th Hour, owned and handled by Adam DeLude, taking the coveted spot, with runner-up being Emmert's Show Me Mo, handled and owned by Dave Emmert. In the German short-hair pointing world, the NGSPA Amateur Pheasant Shooting Dog Championship concluded in Y Island, Maryland, this year with Janie being named champion, handled by Chris Young, owned by Robert Reynolds, and runner-up champion being named German short-hair pointer male Blitz, owned and handled by Scott Weslow. Stay up to date with everything NBHA and field trial related at www.nbhadog.org or www.americanfield.com for all your latest news and field trial dates. Now let's welcome in our guest, Miss Mary Sue Schalk. Joining us now on the Breakaway Podcast is Mary Sue Schalk from the Crouse Kennel team out in Western Kentucky. Mary Sue Schalk, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Chores ran over tonight, as usual, and with children, as you know, sometimes chores get done in the dark, and that's not always the easiest thing.
I understand that.
Mary, we've been friends for quite a while. We've judged together, we've ran together, and we've put on things together and stuff. And when this podcast came to fruition, I knew immediately that I had to have you on in some capacity. And as time rolls through in this field trial season, I thought it was the absolute perfect time to have you on. We've got the Quail Invitational on the horizon. You've just had your first walk-in trial with the NBHA banner, and I just thought it was a great time to have you on. But the one thing I want to know first and foremost is, how did Mary Sue Schalk get started in bird dogs as a whole?
Well, Joe, one thing that I've started telling people, especially newbies to the sport, is I don't know life without field trials or bird dogs. My dad and my uncle started as kids. There's a great photo of them together with a setter sitting backwards, an old black and white photo. And it just kind of, it warms my heart to see it. But they were my introduction, so to speak. And it continues today. And just like with everything in life, there's an ebb and flow. I definitely was all about scouting, especially as a teenager. The harder I could ride, the better I was at it, or so I thought. But enjoy the horses tremendously and have grown to love the dogs more than sometimes people probably should love dogs, but I do. And I've been fortunate to really see some great dogs and historically great dogs. And at the time I didn't realize it. So it's just always been a part of my life and who I am and my family.
It is overwhelming when you go to the Crouse Kennel's grounds, because when you step out of the truck, there is herds of cocker puppies and herds of dogs over here doing this and that. It's dogs everywhere. And then when we see you and your dad and Anna Catherine and Matt out there, like there's no shudder. It's just, that's your life. And that noise and that chaos and those feed pans banging and those dogs barking, it's like you guys don't even hear that because it's so much a part of your being.
It really is. And it's funny that you say that, because I just call it, it's welcome to the daily circus. And the cockers, I've recently, and when I say recently, in the past 10 to 15 years, have become a huge part of who we are and what we do. And they're just a joy. And they make life easier. I won't say easy, but easier in regard to dogs, because you can open the kennel gates and turn out 15 or 20. And, when it's time to feed, everybody goes and sits in their spots. I mean, we got a few renegades, but for the most part, they're right there. And if we turned out 15 or 20 bird dogs, Joe, we'd be probably halfway to Tennessee or Michigan before it was time to have lunch. So, and we've got some really great bird dogs that we can turn out in the yard and play with, but it's just not the same as the cockers. And
No.
It is, it's just life. It's day to day. And you wake up and you do the next right thing. And that's how it goes every day.
That's the now, and there's all kinds of dogs, and you guys are a well-oiled machine. Like everybody has a job, and the dogs know their place, and they know when to do this and how it's done, and the routine is very much uniform. But Mary, can you go back into time, and can you remember Mary Sue's first dog, the first dog that Dad said was Mary Sue's dog?
So I think a lot of people will find this quite humorous. The very first dog that was my dog, was Mary Sue's dog, was a Brittany, and his name was Scooter. Now, I don't know where Scooter came from. I don't know, I just remember Scooter. And I remember him being in the kennel. I couldn't tell you how old I was, Joe, but unfortunately he had epilepsy. So we had to put him down. And fortunately for me, I don't remember that part of it. I just enjoy remembering the positive. And he was just a handsome little dog and was a good little bird dog, and just kind of like the cockers. It's interesting that comes full circle that way. But Scooter was my first dog, and then my mother had an Irish setter lab mix that was in the house with us. He was my mom's dog, Lance, and he was a mix. He had the biggest patch of white down his chest, but my mom had my pictures made with that dog, so that's how important he was to her. So that hunting dog has always there. We've never had a dog that wasn't a hunter.
Well, I know what it meant to me to have my first dog that was actually mine. And granted, you were a really young age. Did it really mean that much? Can you go back and really attribute that having your own dog really kind of propelled you into what obsession and addiction you've got now?
Unfortunately, it probably wasn't Scooter that fueled that addiction. As handsome as he was, it was not him. So I have two younger sisters. And when we raised a litter of puppies, we split up the litter. If there were 6, each of us got 2, and we got to name those puppies, and we would take turns. Well, I think we took turns. We tried. I'm the oldest, and I'm very much fit that stereotype. I like to boss. But being able to be immersed in this is where it starts, and this is how we do things, really kept my attention. The process kept my attention. We didn't do as much hands-on. We were busy kids. We were in athletics and running and going, and we were never hindered. If you want to try it, you try it, and you start it and you finish it. But the field trial, again, it was family. It's what we did. And so fast forward to, I've got a 13-year-old lab. There was a time in there that we raised some labs, the American labs, not field trial labs, black lab. And I took her to the vet recently, spent about $300 to learn I have an old dog. Well, Joe, in this game, you don't have a lot of old dogs. So my dad contributes Callie, my black lab, to my love for a dog. And she is a jam up good one. Now, it took me a year to convince my husband, Matt, to let me bring her home. And when I did, we rented and had a postage stamp backyard. She chewed up a rocking chair and broke a canine tooth on a brick, but just has been a tremendous dog and a good family dog. And we hunted her a little bit, but that was never really her job. And now she's 13 years old and goes for walks, and she's just been great for me. And after Callie, there came a bird dog called Krause's Zippity Doo, and he's the dog that propelled me into the handler's seat, whether I really wanted to be there or not. But he was a game changer for me. There were great dogs that I got to put my hands on as a child, and we'll talk about that later. But ultimately, picking puppies out of litters and saying, this is going to be Belle and this is going to be Slip and Tip. And, that is absolutely, that was one of my favorite things as a kid.
That's awesome.
How many puppies is she going to have, And we didn't raise 30 litters of puppies a year. So it was definitely like Christmas when those puppies arrived.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm having these thoughts in my mind of maybe when Mary Sue first went to her first field trial. And I know who that involves. It involves your dad. But were you in diapers when you first went? Because your family's so field trial rich. I just picture Mary Sue out there with a pacifier in her mouth, riding this big Tennessee walking horse, and she's already ready to go. How old were you? Do you remember going to your first trial?
Do I remember it? Absolutely not. So I actually had a conversation with my mom this past week, because since I've been chairman of the Invitational, my opening story is I was at the Invitational was my very first trial. My birthday is November 9th. Well, I started thinking about that, and I thought, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that gets told in the field trial world, and they're great stories, but I really wanted my stories to be true, as close to the truth as possible. So I said, Mom, is that true? No way. November 9th, the Invitational for my lifetime has been the weekend after Thanksgiving. So that's about 3 weeks. And having had a child, and I told her all over the world, I can imagine it, and I'm sure it happened, but I just need a little verification. Of course, you haven't met my mom, but the day's coming. And she said, well, absolutely. And, my dad we're going to leave at this time, and we're going to do this, this, and this. It's apparently a pretty colorful story. But my very first field trial was the Quail Championship Invitational in 1982, and Barshoe Buzzsaw won it. The only reason I know that he's liver and white is because I've seen pictures of him. And I was in the car, I'm sure it was the dog wagon or, the truck following the road gallery. And to me, it is just a great story. And that's where it starts, and it continues to this day.
Sure.
It's amazing. Not very many people can say that. My daughter's first field trial was this past trial we had at the farm, the MBHA walking trial.
And she handled and scouted and did everything. Marshaled.
I'm telling you what, man, I am still on the fence about handing her that whistle. She had it out again today, but she gets that whistle and she runs and she toots that whistle. And and you have children, so you can speak to the joy it is to watching your child enjoy something you do, but to watch her enjoy these puppies, and some of them are knocking her over, and sometimes it's just a train wreck, but sometimes it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. That is it. She did handle those puppies, and she handled them in front of people she didn't know, because I thought, yeah, right, we're going to shut down. Now in the amateur puppy stake, Daddy was in the Kubota, so we had to get in the Kubota with Daddy. But, I just, when she was, oh gosh, I don't know, 6 months, she was little bitty. And I had her on a carrier on a horse. I don't know if I should tell people that, but I did. And it's what we do. It's what we do, Joe. I've had her in the car seat on the Kubota. I was getting ready for the amateur pheasant the year that you judged it with John Lamb. I had her in a carrier in this crazy cock pheasant. When he got up, he squealed and screamed. And I mean, you couldn't ask for more distractions. And that's why I was running Ty, Krause's white dragon, at the end of his hour. He couldn't decide what was going on. And I remember telling you, John, I said, I'm going to find a pheasant. I flushed, and by golly, we got one up. But anyway, back to Anna Catherine. I mean, she was little bitty, and I was on a horse, and it was puppies, young dogs. And I hear this noise, and I thought, what in the world? Oh geez, we're 20 minutes from the house. Am I going to make it? All these things. Joe, she's singing to the dogs.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure she turned around at some point, looked at me in the growler, and told me to be quiet. I was too loud or something like that. And she's got a tough job. She handled all day, and then she's an aspiring veterinarian, so she stays up late at night watching episodes of Dr. Pole. And right. She's got more of a stomach than I do. But she's just an amazing little girl, and she doesn't know any different. It's dogs and horses, every day, and that's just a part of her being.
Granddaddy, man.
Yeah, and granddaddy. And speaking of granddaddy, I know who some of your earlier friends and mentors are, but just briefly go over who some of those individuals were.
Wow. So Stan Went, when you had him on, he talked about the people in the game, and he's right. And we get so caught up in the dogs and the breeding of the dogs and the this of the dogs and that dog, but it is so the people are the fabric that keeps it all together. And the first person that I remember that was important to Uncle Jim and my dad, besides the Epp family, I'll talk about them in a minute, was a gentleman named Marshall Berry. And he lived just 15, 20 minutes from the house. I can take you to his house today. And one of the first dogs, and my dad actually, it was his first championship placement, was a dog named Krause's Berry Hill Sue. So that breeding piece and that encyclopedia piece is you and Dad for sure. But Berry Hill Sue came from Marshall, and I can remember going to his house, and they had like a screened-in porch. And when adults want to talk about things that kids don't want to listen to for very long, the kids get on a screened-in porch, or we were playing with toys. And I can remember going to Marshall's house. But the Epp family was very close to both Dad and Uncle Jim, and they would stop at our farm on their way north every year.
That is the special guest, Anna Catherine, coming through. It's time for her to say something.
She had a great bath, and her daddy is doing a good job wrangling her at the moment. But the Epp family came through, and Joe, man, I had never seen anything like it. You're talking about dogs at our place when you pull up, but they had pickup trucks with dog boxes sitting on them, pulling trailers with dog boxes and horses. And we used to have there's a tornado that hit our place and took out the trees that used to line the road, and they'd stake out those dogs under the trees, and I don't know, 150, 200 yards of dogs. And
wow,
they'd get out, they'd shower, they'd have dinner. My mom would have to get Nose Barbecue, which is about an hour from the house, because that's what Captain Freddie liked. He liked that Nose Barbecue. And they just outstanding family. And Dad and Ed Epp, who is on Horseshoe Plantation, they're still good. And actually, Ed is a big cocker guy too. So,
neat.
It is neat, and it's a good, just Ed's come and judged the Quail Classic for us, and Captain Freddie judged the Invitational, and Dad and Uncle Jim and Ed and Roy, there's no telling what types of shenanigans they got into out north. Good friend of theirs, Ray Pierce, he's on Nonami Plantation. I'm sure they gave him all kinds of trouble. And then Jason Williams, another good friend, and kind of hooked on with the Epps. And that actually was my first trip to Canada, was to their place up there. And I think I was either 4 or 5, but Dad and I flew up and my luggage got lost. So Miss Susie, that's Ed's wife, she took me under her wing, and I'm sure Woody had something to do with that. That's Captain Freddie's wife, Miss Woody, and she would cook for the camp. I mean, it's not an every summer trip for me, and probably never will be, but I remember that as a child.
Yeah. And
I remember my family got a 16-passenger van, and I was, I don't know, 12 or something, and my sisters went, my mom and dad, and Mr. Joe Chapman, who was 72 years old when he started running bird dogs, and he got hooked up with us, and we made that trip and went to Mortlack, and I'm listening to these guys, and it's, as I said earlier, you just don't know what you're living until you take a minute and look back on it.
Sure.
With those people. And Matt, my husband, actually got to meet Captain Freddie in Lexington when the Purina Awards were there. Can't remember which year because they were kind of close together, but I just was so thankful for that because he was older, and he was just the respect for him was just amazing. And Woody would drive the truck, the dog wagon, and with the snacks. You got to know where the snacks are all the time. And I can remember they'd be working dogs. There's some great old VHS tapes of those old trackers with the antennas and the electric, when you're putting plugs in the electric collars. And just great. And like I said, the shenanigans, they'd throw the saddles on the dog wagon when they were done and let the horses run back to camp. I remember that as a kid. And that's something as a kid that just blows your mind.
Yeah.
You don't run your horse back to the barn. How many times have you heard that?
Yeah.
And they're pulling the saddles and letting those jokers rip. But there's just a lot of people. I know we'll get to them later, but at the beginning, it was definitely the family. And I know Marshall Berry was influential. Like I said, I remember sitting on that screen porch, buddy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And looking back though, those people that carve out spaces in your life, you kind of model yourself as people. We have a tendency to model ourselves after other people. It's just human nature. And I can see pictures in your dad's house of those people, and I can see their influences coming out in you and what they meant to you. And it's really easy to pick up on that. But what to this point, Mary Sue? You've got a really young career, but you've been in the game for a long time. What are some of your biggest accomplishments so far, whether it be with your dad scouting or handling on your own, and some of your most fondest memories?
Well, that's a big question because I hadn't really thought about my life in field trials as a career until I read your outline, and I thought, well, I guess some people would call it a career, and I think for me, I just enjoy anytime I can take a dog to the line and I can beat my dad, Joe. I've done something. And I've been braced with Randy Anderson. I've been braced with Gary Lester. And I've been braced with Mike Krause. And, Randy, I was braced with Touch's Blackout when Krause's White Dragon was second in the Kentucky Quail Classic. Randy Anderson was so just a gentleman of the sport. And we had probably a divided find, but Ty was a first-year dog, and I was about to wet my pants because I thought, my little dog is about to jump in here and blow it all to hell in a handbasket real quick. But I didn't shoot my gun, and I think everybody cursed me except me because I was just so glad he stood his birds, Joe, and because he was laying down a ground race. And, he did a good job, finished the hour and got second. But it was that was a great feeling to know that someone like Randy, I felt respected.
Yeah.
And, I would never say that I was equal, but I definitely felt like I had a place in the game as a handler because that is not something I would wake up at night and figure out what I was going to handle next because the loud, the boisterous, the showmanship is something that you need to study and work at. In the horseback game, I think it's a little more so. That's just a snapshot of my world. Like there are things that you can do on a horse that you just can't do on foot.
Right.
So you have to pay attention and, keep your adrenaline in check. It's hard, especially if you got a dog. It's 53 minutes and your dog's showing to the front and you hadn't seen him in 3 or 4 minutes and, you feel like you're in it. It's hard to sit tight and let it roll. That is a hard thing. And you and I think have talked about it when we're handling it. It's like you got to take a breath.
Yeah.
And let it unfold, especially if you're running a high quality dog. And I would say, Krause's White Dragon was Derby of the Year in 1819. He was All Age Dog of the Year in, 21, 22. The years don't really matter. He was that dog for me.
Cool.
He was interesting. I felt like I could put him in my back pocket most of the time and do just about whatever I wanted to do with him. So for me to name my biggest accomplishment so far, it would be that dog. Now his daddy, Krause's Zippity Doo, he looked like a Dalmatian. We ended up selling him to Pine Hill Plantation. And one thing, and people talk about stigma with a dog. And my Uncle Jim said, Mary Sue, you're trying to run a shooting dog in all age stakes. And I was like, oh, he's fine. What do you know, Uncle Jim? You're just an icon in the sport. Yeah. But Zip was Derby of the year, and kind of one of those things that you don't realize it's happening. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of the year and tally at points, and you're like, oh, my little Derby just, he did a good job. He was in the money. Yeah. He may not have won every time, but he was in the money. And I ran him actually at Ames Plantation. I ran Zip, and I was just like, you know what? Uncle Jim's right. He was flashy, looked good. I hunted him with a shoot to reserve place here around home, and, before we started, those guys, it's kind of like, oh, there's a girl on the hunt, Yeah. And then Zip, he was a showman. He just did it. And after I had to leave and go back to my real job, and they were very complimentary. And that makes you feel good, because I knew I put the time in him. And Dad and I both put a lot of time in our dogs. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Mary Sue Schalk broke Krause's White Dragon. But by God, I put a lot of time in him. And Dad handled him once his Derby season and picked up a placement on him, and that sealed that dog of the year for his Derby year. And so you can imagine the ribbon and the conversation that went down with that.
Yeah.
So, and then in 2020, when I got pregnant with Anna Catherine, I didn't get to handle him until after she was born. So she was a Groundhog Day baby, February 2021, and I ran him in March. And I think he had done some good jobs. And actually, you might have helped Dad when he came to the Kentucky Open all age that fall. Did a good job, wasn't in the money. And I ran him in March, and he didn't win, but he was in the money. And so I just promptly took that upon myself to say, well, Dad, this is my dog, and that's what it is. And when it's family and when you're close, and, I feel like your family and Michael Kennedy's family. So I have no shame sometimes.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I'm going to celebrate when you celebrate, and you got to, like, it's got to be, because there's a lot of heartbreak. And if you can't celebrate the good moments with everybody, that heartbreak's going to be hard to swallow.
That's right.
If you don't have somebody to fall back on.
More punches to the chin than there are, winners photos, man, for sure. But
literally and figuratively, when you ride like a wild ninja. I'm telling you what, man.
Dogs,
the things that we do to get a dog back to the front.
That's sometimes. Right. That's right. Dogs like Ty, dogs like Zip, they're all really good specimens of the engine that is Crouse Kennel. Mary Sue, tell our listeners a little bit about Crouse Kennel.
Well, Crouse Kennel is currently, it's my dad and I in Dixon, Kentucky, which is a little town, one stoplight, and it's just God's country. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that would argue that with me, and especially those on the other side of I-75, but in Kentucky, but that's okay. I've been fortunate to see a lot of places because of a bird dog, from Canada to Florida. I hadn't gotten as far out west or up in the Northeast as I would like, but hopefully that day will come. And, Wisconsin is recently in my repertoire, and it's just phenomenal. It's because of a dog. But at Crouse Kennel, Dad and I have about 120 acres, and let me tell you guys that have daughters, teach your daughter how to drive the tractor and how to hook up the truck and trailer. Because let me tell you something, there's nothing worse than your dad, like, looking at you or fussing at you when you're struggling, and you're like, you didn't teach me this. I'm teaching myself. Get out of my way. But he and I work diligently to keep that acreage in a way that it's suitable for bird dogs. And we do have liberated birds, and unfortunately that's the nature of the beast. But when we're working dogs on birds, we're pre-releasing, and then we're run puppies through them to scatter them, or whatever. We're doing everything we can to make it work for the dogs, and it's not just luck. But Dad and Uncle Jim, I wish I'd looked at the concrete at the kennel today, Joe, because it has the date when they poured the kennel concrete, and it was the 70s, cool, before I was born. It is cool because we being my family, Dad's home place is right there on the farm. And then my uncle and his wife built the house on the old family farm place, and there's a horse barn behind it that my great-grandfather built. And when I was a kid, that's where I was. I was in that horse barn, and a lot of great things happened there. And I could go get a horse, and my mom would ring a bell for me to come home. Me and my sisters, or me and my buddies, whoever was there. And there used to be an old saddlebred barn down the road, like about a mile. And I'd ride dad got me a walking pony, and my mom said I had to have riding lessons because my mom rode hunter jumpers at Murray State. Not real competitively, but took a class and ended up competing a little. But she said I had to have, we all took some if we were going to ride. So I rode my pony to my riding lessons and got a little older, and I rode my four wheeler to work because we had, it's a working farm. And when I was a kid, we had tobacco, hay. My sisters and I had mums, and we worked, we mowed, we did what the next thing was. And I'll tell you what, tobacco, I helped Uncle Jim because he had it until he passed, and I helped him at least once. Somehow there's always that one day that I got to go, even when I was older, because I worked in it from the time I was big enough. And so now we have CRP. We leased just a little bit to a row cropper. So we've got our dogs, and I'm not even I'll tell you this, it's fewer dogs than it has been. But I don't count. I probably will never do that. My brother-in-law did it one time. I said, if you ever do that again, it's just, I know their names. I know what kennels they're supposed to be in. And, I know their mannerisms. I know those dogs. And as time has gone on, and I'm sure other father-daughter, or son and dad, or just family teams, your responsibilities shift and change. And now my job is more, puppies get shots, making sure we've got our heartworm. And it kind of happened very subtly. And all of a sudden I realized, I'm in charge of that now. Okay. It wasn't ever a sit down conversation, but, and with Anna Catherine, tagging along, Dad is just, I've only seen him really kind of get right with her maybe once or twice. And, for me, I'm just like, and I'll see her do things and I think, oh, here it's coming. And it's just not. He's just amazing with her, and whatever Anna Catherine wants to do, just about we do, as long as it's in the line of what we are doing, just like working dogs today on pigeons. And it's kind of my job, and it's my job as her mom regardless. When she's had enough, we got to shut it down. And I appreciate too that Dad's understanding of that. And sometimes he's out of town and it's on me. I'm like, everybody will get fed and watered. It might not take, by myself I can do it in an hour and a half. With Anna Catherine, it's about times 3, because one minute we're washing pans and the next minute she's eating dog food, and that's just how it goes. So it's Dad and I and Anna Catherine, and we've got some horses, and so that's kind of our core. We've got English cockers, the pointers, and a few setters. It's just interesting. The cockers are a newer addition in the last 10 to 15 years, and I wouldn't have put money on this, at the start, but Dad says if he had to give everything up for one dog, he says it would be a cocker.
Wow.
And they're just pretty amazing little dogs, and they can and will do just about anything you ask them to. So I've had some that have been goose hunters. I've got some that get to vacation on Martha's Vineyard, so they're living better than you and I are. So, and with the pointers, I don't know, they're just amazing dogs, and I think that some of them would be just fine. We sold some out west to a lady in Idaho, and her family actually knew the Epps, Miss Colleen Shannon, and they have their bird dogs. And I'm not talking about one, Joe. I'm talking about 3 or 4 pointers in the house, and they hunt those jokers and just do everything with them. And I'm proud to say they came from our stock, and they're a testament to the breed themselves, and they are fancy. I just look at them when she sends me pictures and I think, daggum, okay. They're living their best life, and that's what we want ultimately, whether our hands are on them or yours. So,
and Crouse Kennel is a busy place, because when I was there the last time, 2 litters of cockers on the ground. There's dogs in all different phases of training, and you're keeping dogs topped off, and the edges sharp on some, and some you're rehabilitating and starting all over. It's like you said, it's kind of like a zoo. You've got all kinds of things going on there, and you and your dad, along with Vincent and Cora, that help out there, do a lot there with that outfit. But let's move over to the actual field trial side of things. And you have a heavy hand, along with your dad, in the Ohio Valley Field Trial Circuit and that whole West Kentucky field trial scene. Tell me a little bit about that community and that environment.
Well, I recently found a bunch of old Ohio Valley Field Trial Circuit awards banquet programs, and you got to see them. I got to get you some to look at. They were just booklets with dogs after dogs, and I did grab in the 70s, in 1972-73 season, they started doing the Ohio Valley Field Trial Circuit Dog of the Year Awards, and the Ohio Valley Field Trial Circuit was just Kentucky itself is rich in bird dogs.
Yeah,
it's really unique, and we're very fortunate, you and I, to enjoy those bird dogs. For you at Berea, I mean, out your back door, and Paducah for me is about an hour and a half. So this list, Joe, just starting in 72, 73, of course, you got Farrell Miller at the top of the list.
right.
With a Miller's White Lady, and then to look down here and see Silver Bullet, Small's Northbound. Mike Small runs some good dogs, and it just, we've got Krause's Caroline, which is a dog that Uncle Jim campaigned both of them, and then it's just on and on. I'm looking for some other guys that you may know, but Ben Adams was a staple at Fort Campbell. Sam Salyer and Sam and his daughter Virginia Salyer. I meant to say earlier about field trial grounds and field trial places, and you're talking about people. Every place you go has its characters.
Yeah.
And I remember at Fort Campbell as a kid, Sam Salyer, I mean, he was a pistol. And Mr. Ray Darnell, just the kindest, gentlest man. And these guys, in my memory, were gray-headed. But they were going to take care of you. Sam was going to tell you some kind of whopper. And Sam was retired military. But man, oh man, he was a character. And those guys are what did it. So it used to be Fort Campbell, and there were 2 or 3 clubs out of Fort Campbell. Of course, Paducah had 2 or 3 clubs, and Illinois, and I believe Indiana, Joe. I'd have to fact check that one, but we don't run trials in Indiana, except Keith Wright's got his place going, and good for him. But there was an old strip mine in southern Indiana that we would run. I can't recall the club name right now, but there was a Wren Lake Club in Illinois, Southern Illinois Bird Hunters, and they're still going. They're just not members of the Ohio Valley anymore. Now, Wren Lake is a member. So right now in the Ohio Valley Circuit, I've got Volunteer State, which was a Tennessee club, but the Kegels, Chris and Pete Glass, I've got that going. They'll run after the Invitational. They run after the Kentucky Quail Classic, their trial. And then we have the Coalfield, the Reelfoot Club. We host an Ohio Valley Circuit Club trial. I don't know if I said all those words in order, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
it's a circuit trial. We host it. And West Kentucky has a trial, and then we do have the Invitational and then the Kentucky Quail Classic, and we rotate. Kentucky's part of Region 4, and Region 4 championships rotate. And now Region 4, it used to be Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia and Michigan. And Michigan has moved to Region 13. And Indiana, of course, doesn't have the grounds. But and I know the regions for guys that aren't necessarily in the game, it's kind of confusing. But you can get on the AFTCA website and check it out. Mm-hmm. And the regions, Region 6 has a lot going on. Their Ohio Valley Circuit is Region 6. Where Region 4, we run 3 amateur championships, shooting dog championship, a walk and shooting dog championship, and then the all age. And this year, Joe, all 3 of those are in Kentucky. So 2 at Berea, the walking and the all age, and then the shooting dog is going to be in Western Kentucky at the WMA. And I think, back to Western Kentucky and the Ohio Valley, the West Kentucky Wildlife Management Area in its inception was about bird dogs and field trials. And men before me were laying those foundations. J.D. Boss, who's in the Bird Dog Hall of Fame, and I stayed at his house. I had no idea, J.D. Boss was this, little white-haired man with horn-rimmed glasses, and just put me in the dog wagon, took me all over. And so that's what's going on in West Kentucky. And another thing about those grounds, West Kentucky Wildlife Management Area, is they are huge lab grounds. Mm-hmm. And so we're very fortunate. The manager, Tim Crayer, he really works with us. We get our schedule out early in the year. And even if I have a championship, like this year I have the Region 4 Shooting Dog Championship, we got that on the calendar early.
Cool.
And he takes care of us, and I appreciate him doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it takes a team to keep all that going and rotating and moving and all delineated and knowing what's coming up and doing that. And that's
That's exactly right.
That's the administrative maze that you kind of find yourself in year after year, and you're a professional at it. But there's one date on the calendar every year, and it's already come up in conversation here. And it puts West Kentucky back on the top of the map every year in November after Thanksgiving, and that's the Quail Invitational. Tell me and tell the listeners that don't know anything about the Quail Invitational what it is and what makes it different from the other horseback trials on the circuit.
It is the best trial there is, Joe, so it's an easy topic of conversation. But first, we'll start with the basics. It's held in actually Keville, Kentucky, 10535 Ogden Landing Road. If you're not busy, and you can come on down. The road gallery does get to see quite a bit. West Kentucky Wildlife Management Area, so we can't have a UTV or something with a gallery wagon following everybody around, but great venue. And a unique thing to the West Kentucky WMA is there are 6 1-hour courses. And I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't know as a kid that wasn't a norm.
Yeah, no, it's not.
I'm embarrassed to say that, but I just didn't know that. And to realize that and to go other places and know that that's a jewel for us. And one misconception people have is that we train there. We do not train there. We go for field trials and that's it. So, but now that I know, it's so big, I'm like, well, maybe I should. But I'll tell you what, loading up to go train somewhere would be a feat in itself. But Back to the Invitational, it's a unique trial, and I would recommend. There's a book called The Invitational Champions that the former chairman and president of the West Kentucky Field Trial Club wrote, John P. Russell, excuse me. It's worth investing in.
Big time.
The history in it is invaluable, and it's up to 2016. So there's a lot of great information, and the dogs by year, the field. So you see dogs in that were great dogs, but maybe never won the Invitational. So the unique format is that your dog runs 2 1-hour heats on Saturday and Sunday, weather permitting. We do hope and pray for that annually. And if you run the morning Saturday, you'll run the afternoon on Sunday. You run opposite times a day. And your brace mate is different both days. The end of those 2 days running, the judges will have a callback. And like most callbacks, those dogs are usually listed in order. And for the years that I've been doing this, the way I recall it is we've always had the callback is run on Monday or the third day of competition. It's a 2-hour heat. And the judges pick your brace mate. And we've had 2 braces of callback dogs with 2 dogs on standby. Now, in the past, I think it's 8. This will be my 8th year. I can't remember any callbacks. This could be those 5th and 6th dogs or those standby dogs. Mm-hmm. I can't remember any standby dogs, but I know it's happened. And again, that's why you need to pick up a book so you can read a little bit about it. But because there's been weather delays, and there have been the very first year I was the chairman, a judge called me on Friday morning and couldn't make it, and that is no fault of their own. Life happens. Same goes with dogs. You never know what's going to happen. And these are competition athletes, and they are out there working hard, and you never know what could happen. So it's just an amazing event because you got to go for 3 days.
Right.
And you got to put the pieces together for 3 days. And I can't remember if I heard it or read it. I feel like I heard somebody say it recently. If a dog can do it in Keville, they can do it anywhere. But I think the interesting thing is most of these dogs have been all over, traveled different places. And I've seen dogs come out on the first day and it's like they live there, they know what they're doing, and then come apart on Sunday. And I've seen dogs that only got better as the 3 days progressed,
right,
learning to apply themselves. And you've seen it. Some parts are open and it's perfect. And some places you got to navigate.
And this particular trial, Mary Sue, is extremely unique. You've got to qualify by certain means, and there's only how many dogs that qualify?
There's 12 dogs. Sorry,
12 dogs.
I left that part out. So how do you qualify? In 2020, we voted to use the national championship qualifiers. So that's put or I shouldn't say a lot, but it's put some first year dogs in. For example, Haney Storm Warning, our champion from last year. He was a first-year dog. So 12 dogs qualify over the course of a season. So it used to be the Southwestern Championship. That was the cutoff trial. That's when you stop keeping points and you start contacting people, because you kind of have the month of October to find out, get confirmations from handlers, and they have to talk to owners, and it takes a minute to get that together. But there's already been several points trials run this year. You and I were talking a little bit about that before we got started. There are dogs well on their way to being in the top 12 next year because of the trials that have been run. So you take those top 12 dogs and extend invitations, and then if for whatever reason, 1 year I think one had passed away over the course of the year, so you go to the next dog on the list to get your 12 dogs.
And what I find cool about this, like this trial and its history goes way back. Like there's only a couple trials that have history that go way back, and we're talking way back in the 40s. So this trial takes place initially in 1941 and 1942, and then there's a thing called World War II, and it doesn't happen again until I believe it's 1964, and that's when the West Kentucky scene picks that trial back up and reincarnates it and brings it back to life. And the dogs through history there are all dogs that wrote the history books throughout field trials as a whole in the all-age scene. And when you go into the clubhouse there at Paducah, it's one of the favorite things to do is to go in there and look at those faces of those people and those dogs that did that in Kevel, that made it through the mud and did it those 3 days running through there. And I think a house is Rain Cloud. More recently, one of the dogs that I fell in love with when I first started paying attention to High Test Skyhawk. And all of those trials specifically have a really unique story. And you said some of those dogs kind of fade and it gets tough on them through those 3 days, and some of them get stronger. And I don't think last year's was any better of an example of that, because Haney's Storm Warning, as we've all said, the dog that's just kind of taken over the horseback scene in the all-age circuit, he did it 3 days consistently. And then the runner-up dog, Woodville's Yukon Cornelius, everybody said it was amazing to watch that dog get better over those 3 days, because you'd think a dog would fade. That's a lot to take out of the engine there. It's a lot of fuel to use up. But those dogs got stronger as those 3 days go, and the endurance part of this is what sets this trial apart. You get
Absolutely.
3 days, 3 different scenarios, maybe 3 different weather conditions, and just 3 different times for those judges to really sort those dogs out and find out who is different, which dog is different than the rest, which dog can gut it out, which dog has those intangibles that we're so desperately trying to breed into our dogs. And that's the part of it that I kind of romance over, that I find over it. Randy romanced over it. Dr. Went romanced over it. And that's what sets it apart. And, I don't think people understand the grueling nature of that. And it's a team effort to run this thing, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
You guys have a raffle to raise money, and you have to contact these people. There's a really distinct drawing that has to take place. It's a lot of work.
I appreciate that acknowledgement, because it is, and I certainly couldn't do it without I shouldn't say my people, but my people, their family. You touched on Vincent earlier, Vincent Major. Great kid. He currently is driving the dog wagon for us, and he helps at the farm. He's a leather craftsman. He did these amazing belts last year for our team of judges.
Who is building me a holster as we speak.
Well, good. Don't cut into my invitational gear, okay, buddy? But yeah, Alan Benson and Don Wiggins. And I'll tell you, people just will say, oh, I can marshal. I've been here. Dennis Sneed did that for me. Michael Kennedy has helped marshal. He's now one of my judges. And the Brinson family, I cannot talk about the Invitational without talking about them. Eddie Brinson and then his son Nathan, they judged the Classic last year, but Eddie stepped in and judged the Invitational. I think he's been one of the guys when I've had things come up with judges at the last minute. Hey, can you step in and do this for me? My uncle Jim did that for me a year, maybe 2. Like, things just happen, and those people there, you'll appreciate this. Dad probably won't, but Dad was pretty sick one year, and I actually think it was the year I was pregnant, so I wasn't right. Well, I rode a little, but I got so much grief. What are you doing out here on this horse, girl? Randy Anderson was number 1. I think he would have knocked me off and drug me back. But I said, this is my dog, and I'm going to watch him run. And but I told Eddie, Dad was really sick, but, he gutted it out, and he wasn't going to not do it. I said, if he falls off dead, I said, you finish this trial, and you call me, I'll come get him. Because Dad was just being honored, and he was sick, but he was doing the best he could. But I knew Eddie would step in, because I was still working, too, at the time. I worked in school administration, but those guys, there's Ralph and Eddie, or Ralph was the patriarch, and there's a barn that they use, and the boys put a sign up in his honor, and I just love it. They'll come and do anything for me. They've helped put roofs on barns before, and Jay Lewis is in that mix, and the wives, man, Carol is Eddie's wife, and I don't ever have to worry about them because they're taking care of themselves, but they're going to step in if I say, hey, I need your help, or can you go get this judge's horse, or can you go do this? They are just a great family. And we started doing a 50 pot raffle at the drawing, and we do a silent auction. Try to keep things manageable. We do the drawing on Friday night. And Joe, when I was a kid, the Daisy Inn there in Paducah, that was a place. That's where he stayed. They had a big buffet meeting hall. It's not there anymore. The hotel is, and they still offer rates to our field trialers. And that it was an event. And that's when you did drawings on typewriters. So whoever was doing the drawing was there for a minute. And now I just pray that the Wi-Fi works so I can print them out, or somebody can take a picture on their phone, and then it's out there just that quick. I mean, but we, of course, during COVID, we had to do some things different. And if I remember correctly, I think the year after COVID, I did the drawing in my husband's office on video, and, no one complained or anything like that, but it's just not the same. It is so much better for people to be in person and face to face. And when you're drawing out handlers and dogs and owners, the owners want to hear their dog's name called. They want to see it. And we have if you've got 3 dogs as a handler, you're not going to run 3 hours in a row. That's another one of the invitational things. And something else, I should have said this earlier, that's unique to the invitational. If you turn your dog loose at the beginning of your hour, he disappears 15 minutes in. And this would be on Saturday. On Sunday, you'd want to get your tracker probably, because unless they just did an untouchable job on Saturday, it's quite a strategic trial. I mean, if you stop and think about it. So on Saturday, if you can leave him down for the hour and not get your tracker, you still got Sunday to make it up. But once you get your tracker at the invitational, you're done. So that is unique to our trial. So, Saturday I turned Smokey loose and I just can't handle it, or, I don't think my scout's got any kind of beat on him. I get my tracker, then my brace mate on Sunday's got to buy.
Yeah. That's tough. That's tough.
So yeah, it is tough. And it is, it was interesting to hear Randy talk about his first win at the Invitational and how he had a strategy and it worked. And I just thought, of course he did.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him, because you do have to have your mind right going into a trial like that. And you have to know.
Yeah.
And we try this year. I'll be the front marshal. So next weekend, definitely keep me in your thoughts and prayers, because I'm not as loud as the guys. And I'm thinking about getting a voice amplifier. I'm also going to try to get the course marked with flags. They do that at the national championship, and I think that'll be beneficial to everyone. But we really try as a team of marshals to help handlers and help scouts as well. Everybody wants to see a show.
Sure.
Everybody wants to see that performance. So all hands on deck will do everything they can to make it happen. And I know when I started handling dogs a little more regularly, and somebody would point my dog out before I saw it, I got down on myself, because I was like, I should know where my dog is all the time. And you can't. So it's really a courtesy of the sportsman in the game. Oh, there your dog goes. And hopefully he's where he's supposed to be. That coming up on the left or coming up on the right, you're just like, that's not the coming up I wanted to hear. So I wanted to coming up. He's pointed up here on the left, how it goes. You want to hear, there he goes across the front. And it makes you feel good when people are rooting for you, even though they've never met you. And I hope that that's how those guys feel coming in, that we're rooting for them.
Yeah. And the grueling nature of the trial hasn't changed, but so much has. Randy was just kind of reminiscing a while back, and he was talking about how people used to get dressed up for the drawing, and it was an event in itself, and it was, it was a banquet almost, and lots of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And lots of things have changed, though, over time, whether we like it or not. And the only consistent thing in life is change. But the field trial world changed dramatically in 2018, and a giant of the game was lost tragically and way too early, and that was Uncle Jim, Jim Crouse. And I know Jim has a massive place in your heart, and I can't go anywhere without someone talking about the real estate that he owns in their field trial hearts. lost him tragically in 2018. One of the most respected individuals of the game, judged the national championship from 2011 to 2018. I think he only missed 2016 because of a medical issue, and he was also on the AFTCA Board of Trustees, Board of Directors at the National Bird Dog Museum. Just an absolute giant of the sport, but in 2018, the field trial world is just trying to find their feet without Jim Crouse. Tell us a little bit about Jim and what he's meant to you and really the field trial game.
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to talk about what he or my dad mean to me or the field trial game, Joe. So Uncle Jim will forever be Uncle Jim. Even pictures here in the house, our dad's, who's that, Mama? That's Uncle Jim. And I'm sitting here looking at my mom cross-stitched a prayer for us, and hanging on it is a whistle. And my Uncle Jim was a coach, and Dad gave that whistle to Anna Catherine, and that was not the whistle I gave her to run around and chase bird dogs. But his presence, it will always be with me, and some days it's easy, Joe. It's he was a big part, and he when we loaded up to go to a field trial, we had a couple rigs. It wasn't just one at the time, and I was ornery, and I would tell my sisters they could play with something that I had that they wanted, or I would wheel and deal to get in the truck with Uncle Jim, and then I would pretend to be allergic to cigarette smoke because as a kid, that's all you hear: cigarettes are going to kill you. So I'd crack my window, and you have to excuse my language, but it's Uncle Jim vintage. What the hell are you doing, Mary Sue? I said, Uncle Jim, I'm allergic to smoke, And now every time, and when I smell a cigarette, which you don't very often anymore, I always think of Uncle Jim. And he was just a character. And he and my dad were so different, but there were so many things that were so strong in similarities. And he scouted for my dad more than he ran dogs. And I can remember telling me, of course, as a kid, you want to go fast. But he said it's not about the fast. It's the do the right thing at the right time, be where you need to be, watch the dog. And now Uncle Jim was a talker, and that would drive my dad crazy. So my dad would always, now your Uncle Jim's going to be talking, so you watch the dog, and But that's I just can't even find the right words to put him in a cap. So I, even at his funeral, I had written a poem or something for my high school English class about Uncle Jim, and he was always, especially in the summers, those uniforms, those like khaki uniforms in his belt with his bird dog buckle, and we worked in the tobacco field together. We went to field trials together. He would play tennis with me. He'd play even my sister Megan got married first, and her husband's an incredible athlete. My sister Megan's an incredible athlete, and so her husband Tim and Uncle Jim took on the three of us. And of course, they beat us, and we'll never live it down, never, ever live it down. But he was a competitor to the nth degree, which I love. I'm a competitor too, and it's in our family. And he was an educator, and he gave, and he that was the lead by example. And you're taking it all in, and you don't know it's sinking in. And Joe, the first field trial we went to after Uncle Jim was killed, was the Region 4 Shooting Dog Championship in Michigan, when Michigan was still part of Region 4. And it was my first year as the Region 4 Secretary Treasurer. And I wanted to go to every trial as Secretary Treasurer. Now that has since not been true. You just can't make them all. But we went to Michigan, and Kent and Sherry Merriman, Jim Simpaneri, Sandy McLean was there. The Hodges were there. And we never met. Some of them we'd met, but they were just so kind and understanding. But that's the hardest field trial I've ever loaded up to go to. And just about every time the season rolls around, Uncle Jim could call and talk to people that, I just don't have time to sit and chat on the phone. It's been like weaving an origami rug to try to get for us to talk. So you understand that. But I'd say, Uncle Jim, I need you to call so-and-so. Can they do that? And he could carve out that time. And salty sense of humor. I'll never forget. I mountain biked a little bit in college, and I had this road bike, and I was on the farm and clipped in. And I don't know if people cycle or not, but oh my word, I fell over in the driveway, Joe. And he was standing right there. What are you doing? Like, get it together. And he I wanted to talk a little bit about judging, and Jim Lawless was looking for a judge for the Region 5 Shooting Dog Championship, and he called my Uncle Jim. And I don't know, you'd have to ask Jim Lawless exactly how the conversation went, but Uncle Jim was completely supportive of me judging that event. And there were several dogs. If I remember correctly, it was 3 or 4 days of running. And I judged off and on, weekend trials. And Dad and I may have judged a Vizsla championship. And the very first trial I judged was with Pat Sheehan. And it was when they still had trials at Wren Lake. And I was probably 13 or 14 years old. And, I don't remember that. I remember judging with Pat and him being kind. And I remember one guy walked and ran his dog. I remember that. But Lawless was looking for a judge, and Uncle Jim said I'd be all right. I can only imagine how he put it into words, because he had a way with words. And I made it work. I was still working full time. And it was like different planets all 4 days of the trial. And I called him and we talked, and we talked about dogs, and we talked about, the characters that come with field trials, and what you're there for is the dogs, and you're looking for the best one. Right. And it really doesn't matter what breed they are. But you're looking for the best dog, best bird dog, working, applying himself, hopefully between 10 and 2, but you got to take into consideration where you are. Up there in Wisconsin, there's objectives. It's a big space. How you going to, you're not looking for a reason to pick a dog up. You're looking for a reason to cheer a dog on and to get excited. I love being able to point out a dog to a handler as a judge and just, almost getting goosebumps like I'm running it.
Yeah.
It's exciting. You learn from it. And I just really appreciate that vote of confidence from my uncle. And I never knew that. Jim told me after the trial, and Dr. Alan Dunbar won it with a setter that you probably know well, GF Witch Doctor.
Yep.
And quite an enjoyable dog to watch. And Buddy Morrison was runner up, and I can't recall the dog's name right now, but Buddy Morrison's another good dog, man.
Yeah.
From Tennessee, and is a good judge. Is a fair shake kind of guy. And I want to encourage people, and I think there's a misconception that as a new person to field trials that you don't belong judging. Oh yeah, you do. You get hooked up with a veteran. You get hooked, that was Michael Kennedy. I think the first trial he ever judged was with Buddy Morrison. It was great for Buddy, and it was great for Michael.
Sure.
And you just learn so much, and you also learn what you like.
Yeah.
When you're judging a field trial, and it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and granted your first judging assignment shouldn't be at the Ames Plantation, and it's not going to be, but you're going to sit in the saddle on a weekend trial with someone that's done it for 30 years. You're not only going to learn about judging, you're going to learn about trialing in general. You're going to become a better handler. You're going to become a better trainer just by sitting with somebody with that kind of judging acumen. And Uncle Jim, or Jim Crouse, he'll be remembered or imprinted on people's minds, I guess, mostly because of A, his personality and who he was, but B, he's kind of the mold of a judge, sitting in the saddle that long at the National and stuff, and being that senior judge. He'll be remembered as a judge. And there's a video out in the ether that the NBHA did years ago, a judging panel with, I remember Dewey Mullins was on that panel, Uncle Jim was on that panel, and then John Russell was on that panel.
Yes, sir.
And I've got bits and pieces of it, and I know Adam Thomas with the American Bird Hunters Association put tidbits of it out. It is invaluable. Like, that is such an invaluable resource and piece of media. And if whoever owns those tapes, please get those out into the hands of somebody that can make those available.
Those are DVDs, and I think I can track some down. We'll have to tag team that and get those out there. But that's exactly right. And I'm going to tell you something. Of course, so Dad lost most of his memorabilia in our house fire, like 2012. But Uncle Jim just had quite a bit, which his widow, my Aunt Linda, was very kind and has given it to us. And this wasn't really an intentional thing, but at one point, Uncle Jim had like a resume of trials he had judged, and I thought, well, that's pretty neat, And so I throw my old judge's book in. I got a drawer with all my gear. I mean, the basement at my dad's is a locker room. I'm thankful I live 45 minutes south, so I got some place to stash my gear, and I don't have to worry about it, But in some of that memorabilia, which I mean, you've seen it, the American Fields, the Plenty Dog Journals. One day when I retire from I don't know what, I might get to go through all that stuff, but were his judges' books from the national championship.
Cool.
And Dad didn't know because that's just not his thing to go through boxes. But so I handed those to my dad, and that was just, it's moving. And that's just a piece of history that we all share together.
Yeah.
And we went and rode, I can't remember what year, but BJ Wright, who's also like family to us.
Sure.
Man, he helped out Dad. Probably when I was in college was when BJ and Dad got hooked up. But BJ and Dad and I rode, and we got a picture with Uncle Jim in front of, we're not on the green steps.
That's awesome.
You can't do that unless you earn your way there. But it's sitting right next to Crouse's White Samurai, the picture the last time we ran him at the Ames Amateur Invitational, or excuse me, the Amateur All-Age Invitational. But it seems like a funny thing. And if you haven't lived your whole life with field trials judges books, you're probably thinking, can't you just recycle those? But, you look at those and you see those winners. And when Michael came and rode and saw Lester Sunny Hill Joe win, just to see, well, what did Uncle Jim think about that dog?
Yeah.
What did his notes look like?
Yeah. You're led into the mind of, almost a bird dog genius or someone that's so well respected. And that's territory that some people, would give an arm and a leg to be near or to hear or to be close to. And it's not easy to get around those people as our game contracts and these people get older and stuff. It's why it's so important just to go to trials and get hooked up with people. You never know what you're going to be made privy to and what experiences you're going to have and what wisdom's going to be imparted on you by these characters. And Jim was definitely at the top of that heap. And those pictures in your dad's house of him and Uncle Jim and you girls growing up stacking dogs up for photos, those are worth so much more than money. But there was also some photos taken a couple weekends ago, Mary Sue, with some new faces to Crouse Kennel grounds, and you guys did something kind of a little bit different there at Crouse Kennel. You hosted a walk-in trial, not only just any walk-in trial, you had an MBHA trial. What in the heck is going on out in West Kentucky?
I know. It's just, so the sport, the game itself is just an incredible thing, period. And to share that with people, Dad and I have had some seminars at the farm, and we might venture down that road again. But to get to this National Bird Hunters Association trial, we could actually go back to when you and I met the Region 4 Walking Shooting Dog Championship that Mr. Jim Duncan hosted.
Yep.
And, I ran a dog and the tracker didn't work, and then Dad got a phone call and he was, back in Dixon. And what do you mean, Joe? I mean, Daddy's an all-age dog, and you tell me to run him in a walk.
And he was 2 neighborhoods over.
Oh, man. And Miss Donna Boatwright took me down the road to get him. The track and collar didn't. I mean, that's just field trialing right there. You asked me about a field trial 2 weeks ago, and we're however many years ago. But I think, first of all, you want to educate people, and you want people to have access to the event. So we have Crouse Kennel in Dixon, Kentucky, and have for years and years and years. But do the people in Dixon, Kentucky know what we're doing? Not particularly, unless they're friends of our family or they were bird hunters themselves, which those people it's less and less all the time. So, and I also, as an officer for the Ohio Valley and president of West Kentucky and just different capacities, Region 4, we got to meld all these things together. So I attended the Kentucky Field Trial Association meeting, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And the walking part at Berea is pretty strong, or that's my perception.
It is.
So I thought, well, heck, I know somebody down the road that's got a dog. I can, and talking to you and James Cleve and getting and being asked to judge those events. And I'm learning how they go and what they do. I mean, it's a field trial, and you got handlers on foot. You got dogs that may be a 1 or 2 dog house, and these guys, this is what they want to do on their weekends.
Yeah.
Well, we can give that to you.
Yeah.
And one thing too, and I don't want to say this out loud, but it's the truth. Like, Dad used to run and gun and go to the open trials when he could and when it made sense. But yeah. She'll be 3 in February. She thinks she's 25, but those days right now for me, it's not ideal, and it's not healthy for my family.
Sure.
To be gone all the time, and you got to prioritize, and that's what makes it hard. I tell people that are new to the game, this is the worst drug you'll ever take.
We have a lot of therapy sessions on the phone together because
yes, we do.
We would like to do this full time. But
Oh my goodness, Joe. It's just, a different life, my friend, a different life. It is a great, just fulfilling roller coaster. But the NBHA trial on the farm was to get that to other people and to show them. And my gosh, if you'd told me that Anna Catherine was going to run her dogs and blow her whistle, I said, yeah, right. I thought when Granddaddy was on the horse and Vincent was on the horse and her buddy Cora was on the horse, there's no way she's going to stay on the ground. But by golly, she did. The only time I picked her up was when Mr. Terry Boatwright, he wasn't fussing, but I mean, you know how we get squalling at dogs, and she wasn't real happy about that. And I picked her up and she got back down and took off again. So, and I'll tell you another thing about hosting this trial, and I appreciate the American Field Trial Clubs of America, the AFTCA, what they do for us and do for our sport. But I mean, it was like when that MBHA had hit the field or hit the website or whatever, somebody was texting me, this is coming, what can we do? And I'm fortunate that you're my friend and that MBHA is a big part of who you are. And I just said your name's as a judge. I mean, there wasn't a lot of question. It wasn't please or thank you. It was like, I'll see you when you get here.
Yeah.
But it's just a great, Greg Blair, he's just about anything I ask Greg, hey, Greg, can you, send me some stickers or send me this? Purina just goes above and beyond. And that makes it easy.
Yeah.
People who want to do, make it easy. And that the MBHA, man, they were awesome to me. And I tell you what, that paperwork though for 6 stakes, that caught me off guard a little bit. I do that, and that's definitely something I could improve on is writing reports. And I guess we all could if that's not our forte, but you try to get that information in a timely manner. And I hand wrote Mr. Penn, just really trying to express my gratitude and to encourage, try to encourage others. If I'm singing your praises, hopefully somebody will say, hey, we got 150 acres, 200 acres. And I'd also like to tell you how that another little seed that got that started. So we had our Ohio Valley Circuit meeting to, have our business meeting and recognize our dogs in the year. And there's a gentleman named Josh Griggs. He's walking dogs, and he got a Sunny Hill Joe puppy from us. I think Gus is 3 or 4 years, probably older than I want him to be. And that's how it usually goes. But Gus was Sunny Hill Joe, and the dam was wild again. So good bloodlines. He got this pup. And anyway, we've tried to plug Josh in, and actually he got a horseback placement on Gus. You might have been there anyway at Paducah. So Josh comes and he's like, I can only be here for a few minutes, but I think we should have an NBHA event at Crouse Kennel. We should call it the Jim Crouse Classic. He wanted it to be the Kentucky Classic. And this is foreign territory for me, and I'm still learning this side of NBHA. And James Cleve was there, so he helped us kind of clear the water. And he said, you can't start there, but if that's the direction you want to go, here are some things you should do.
Yeah.
And, credit to Josh and Dad and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, well, I guess we could do that. And I had to rent a porta potty. I'd never done that in my life. So, there's always a first time for everything, but it was just great, Joe. And we kept, I called it a rolling schedule, and we just kept going all day, and we had snacks out, and the dogs were great. The people were great. We had people stepping in to drive the dog wagon. And, my best friend, which is crazy, we've known each other forever, is Sarah Clary and her daughter Cora, which, man, oh man, if I could have had her move into my house, I would have. But she came and scouted and does a good job. And it's just easy. The 30-minute stakes, keep it light, keep it in a framework that's not daunting to someone who's never done it before.
It's about exposure, and
absolutely,
you can get people out there and get their toes wet in a 30-minute stake, no matter what kind of dog they have. If they've got a puppy, if they've got a finished dog, it doesn't matter. If you've got a gun dog, I mean, there was professionals out there all the way down to Anna Catherine, who's not even 3 yet, and everybody else in between. And it's about exposure. People see that, hey, I can do that. Those people look like me, or I've got dogs like that, or maybe my dog would be good. You expose yourself, expose your dogs, and it's all about exposure. And what you guys did with that trial is exactly the forte of what the NBHA tries to do. First and foremost is expose people and get it out and get people started, because if you just get in and find out if you like it and what you like, there's no telling where you'll go in this game. It might be to the cover dog woods. It might be on a horseback and doing horseback trials, or it might be right in the main vein of walking trials there, but you wouldn't know it unless you had a platform
you saw it. That's
to
right.
step right into. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves in, is this is a platform anybody can step into to see what it is to be found for them. And the trial you guys had is exactly that. And it was a wonderful event. So many people stayed and stayed both days, and it was a marathon. We ran both days, got it all done. Everybody's smiling in the photos. That's exactly what it's about. But there's another thing, Mary Sue, that's a large part of probably what you think about and what you've been through in your trial life, and that's being a female in this sport. Now, I'm going to say it's a male-dominated sport, but it's not dominated. It's just by the numbers, there's more males than females.
Right.
But I know of a cavalcade of so many good and accomplished females on the training, handling, and breeding side of things. And I want to touch on this with you. What's it like being a female in this field trial world?
Well, I'll start by saying it just really never hit me like a 2x4 because I thought I was hanging out with people that might have well been my family, like uncles and grandparents. And, now I feel like they're my brothers, and I'm just comfortable in that situation. But when you're braced with somebody who bellows like a bull moose, it's pretty clear, that you are quite different, and that's okay. I think as a woman, you got to be comfortable in your own skin. There are a lot of women that do amazing things, and in what is just naturally by the numbers, it's more men than women. So it might be challenging in some regards, but I think the challenge for me is knowing the experience that's on the other horse beside me. It's not so much about it being a man or a woman.
Right.
It's about, I usually know who's sitting there, and I usually know the dog that's sitting there too.
Right.
So I'm sure I can understand as a woman looking from the outside in that could be intimidating, but one of my I just think the world of this lady is Maisie Davis. And she told me, I can't remember what event we were going to, but she said, Mary Sue, you know your dogs. I was scouting for Dad, and it might have been before the Region 5 All-Age Championship when our dog, Krause's Samurai Warlord, won, and you asked me about amazing accomplishments or what I remember. That's one I remember.
Cool.
And you're scouting and you're watching your watch, and back to that, to hold my breath, or do I go around this bend? What do I do next? Because there's 2 minutes left on the clock, and I know we're doing something. But Maisie just she's got this way about her, and I'm sure it carries over to dogs and other people too. And it's smooth, it's calm, it's positive. And if she says "bless your heart," you might want to check yourself, because it's "bless your heart." What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
We've been swapping pictures. We're working these first year dogs, and Dad sent a couple pictures to Maisie and my sisters and I, and text conversations, man, out of control sometimes. But anyway, there's 2 first year dogs, and they're pointing. They look good, and I had to tell her. I said, Maisie, these are first year dogs, and she said, bless their hearts. Those first year dogs, we had a lot of good conversations. She and Common would stop. Another couple that would stop at the farm on their way north, more so in their later years, and they had a little pet dog that got sick at the farm, Roscoe, and he's buried there, and I buried Ty right beside him. Just a little piece of history there. But Maisie can scout a dog. She knows a dog. I just could call her anytime, and she, in conversation with her, I said, well, who's your hero? Who's your idol? That kind of stuff. And I think in the field trial world, it's happening, and there are people that are just legends.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me how we're just field trialers, and you can be having a conversation with Randy Anderson, with Luke Eisenhart, and you feel like you're talking to somebody you've known your whole life, and that common thread is a bird dog. But Maisie said, well, David Johnson, he's the best scout I've ever seen. And I was really fortunate. David judged the Invitational for me 2 years in a row. I was supposed to come back this year. They've got an event down in his part of the world, but I talked to David about it. Of course, he and Maisie scouted, I guess you'd say, against one another or with one another. So just to see and to know and to hear that, you learn a lot. You take it all in. And some other women I would love to give some accolades to. Laura Miller runs Vizslas and had a heck of a Vizsla. She's campaigning for the Hall of Fame, and I saw her run him and did a good job. She does a good job. She works hard.
Yeah.
And Fran Miller, I've never met her, but I've seen her name from here.
Yeah.
You know, she's in it, man, and she's gonna be in it. Jeanette Tracy, Betty Shearhouse, big setter. She's a setter lady.
Right.
Of course, you know this, but I got to judge with Steve Snyder the first time I went to Wisconsin, the owner of Ponderosa Mac. So there's your setter bite, Joe Hopkins.
Thank you. Waiting for a tidbit.
But Scott and Tammy Shafee own the dog, or excuse me, campaign the dog for Steve. And Tammy, I see, is running some dogs now, and I'd love to meet her.
She's dominant. And when I went up there a few years ago to bring Nick up there, because Chafee had my Nick dog on the cover dog circuit for a while, I went up there and I ran with him one day. And she's in the truck with us, and we're going, and she picks the cover that we're going to run in, and we go to the back of the truck, and she's getting on her shooting glasses, and she's getting geared up, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. And boy, she hits the woods, and it was all I could do to keep up with her. And she's taken on a lot more of the handling duties and some of her own dogs there with her husband Scott at Pioneer Kennels, and she's dominating. I mean, they've got a heck of a string there, and she's very, very, very much a part of that operations.
I'll tell you what, I am hopeful that I will be in the woods. I'm just getting to go up to Wisconsin. I just have met so many great people, and that's what they do. And hopefully my path will cross with hers and some other. There's a young lady in Tennessee. I want to definitely toot her horn, and that's Madison McDonald, and that she is Alan Linder's granddaughter. And I met Madison. She came with Mr. Linder to the Invitational. I couldn't tell. I think it was Aaron's Wild Justice, maybe. Anyway, I'd have to double check on that. But she just a sweet kid, and she's probably older than I want her to be, because that seems to be how it goes as we age. But I've noticed in some running orders that she's running some dogs, and she won recently. It was Aaron's Wild Justice. That's who she was watching. I'm fact checking. So you don't have to. but good for Madison, man. If I got all my dots connected, Mr. Allen had dogs with the Tracys, and Luke ran some dogs for him, and probably others. But I'm proud to see Madison in it, and I judged a trial down there. And she ran a dog and didn't get anything done, but she was proud to do it and happy to do it. Mr. Allen was there with her, and go get them, girl.
Awesome.
That's, and we talk about how we get people in it. Well, one more quick, I don't want to leave her out, is Tiffany Genre, who scouted for Randy.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, she was a hero to my Cora, as much as I would like to think that I was. But Tiffany rode a big black horse, and when Cora first started going to field trials with us, and she was riding on her own, he was my old scout horse, Onyx. And Cora can ride like a wild Indian.
That is my top choice personal scout. If I'm anywhere in the country and Cora is near a horse, I will be getting the wallet out to get her to scout for me.
Man, she can ride, and it's just a thrill to see her. Now she's 13, and oh my goodness. But Tiffany rode this big black horse, so Cora just would watch her. I mean, just enamored. And Tiffany would bring Cora gifts. I mean, how else do you get a kid to fall in love, especially a kid that's already in love with a horse? You're riding a horse that looks like hers.
Yeah.
And you're bringing her horse gifts, and everything you do is about her. And that's just great. And I thank Tiffany for that, because, Cora's mother blames me for her horse addiction. But, we ran this dog called Krause's Icy Beauty. She was in the shadow, Mr. Bowman's dog.
Yes. And
nice little shooting dog, flashy. We recently retired her to a plantation. She's going to be a tremendous bird dog down there. But that was Cora's dog. When she was a puppy, Cora got to name her. I like Icy's, but I probably wouldn't call a dog Icy Beauty if somebody really asked me. So when Ice was back-to-back shooting dog of the year, and we got Cora's picture with her, and her mama was a little nervous about me telling her that we sent her to a plantation, blah, blah, blah. Joe, I told her Ice was going to hunt birds, and this was just couple weeks ago at our field trial, she grinned from ear to ear. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad she can go hunt birds in retirement. I mean, for her to get that and get that that's what it's about for the dogs, like, I mean, I'm winning a little.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not turning sides, but we're getting that out there, and it is tough, and you have to know yourself before you jump feet first.
And you've answered the question already that I had for you, is how do we encourage more women to participate? And you've already answered that. It's get them plugged in and get them networked with the women that are in it. Go meet these people. Go find. I know Bridget Ladington's on the circuit right now.
I'm so glad you dropped her name. Yeah, I met her last year. I went for the Hall of Fame induction. She was on crutches. Oh, wow. And she handled her dog. I can't remember if her leg was broke. I think there was a fracture or break, but props to her. She wrote an endorsement for somebody for the Hall of Fame. I mean, she's into the breeding side of things. She's right there in it. And again, you just want to say, you go, girl,
sure.
Get it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I hope she's going to be with Randy at the Invitational. She's been scouting for him. So, and she and her dad run dogs together. I've just kind of seen here and there, and good for them. There's nothing like it.
No, there's not. No, they're good. They're good ambassadors for the sport. And you got to take, if you're a woman and you're looking to get into the sport or more into the sport, go find these women and go connect with them and become friends and network and exchange numbers, go work dogs, and just get involved. Just get involved.
Absolutely. And on that note, you've got Lisa Little with Region 6, the social media side of things. Claudia McNamee is she's another strong woman out there and has the knowledge. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Deb Hauser.
Yes, Deb Hauser.
It doesn't have to be in the field. It doesn't have, there are so many parts of the sport that you can enjoy, and you're going to find your niche. And especially if your husband's involved, I try to con my husband into doing something with food because he's the craftsman. It doesn't always work, but he really, and he's very frank about it. That's just not for me.
Sure.
He's been bird hunting. We were together 7 years before that happened, Joe. So, I mean, he has done it, and he appreciates, he understood my love, especially for Ty. But and he's figuring it out. And unfortunately for him, we met at a time in my life when it was not the first thing. And he's like, "What do you mean you're going to another field trial?" I'm like, I've been married to this for a lot longer than I've been married to you. And I just don't know how to explain that. But he's great and supportive. And that's just it. If your spouse is the one that's head over heels and you just can't process it, and you want to be with them from October to April, I bet they can find something for you to do at a field trial.
There's a therapist out there somewhere that could make a lot of money talking to us field trial people.
Amen, my friend. Amen. And we probably need to be the first ones in line.
That's right. I would have a residency right there. Now let's step back, Mary Sue, and let's take this 30,000 foot view of the game as a whole. And we've talked about how we can get women more ingrained in the sport, maybe, but there's this thing, and me and you talk about it a lot, and we talk about it within our network of friends, and that's just simply growing this sport. What do we have to do? What do we need to do to help grow this sport?
I think you have to run with your strengths. So what do I do well, and how can I help people get their feet wet, so to speak? So we do, and that was the field trial at Crouse Kennel. We have the piece of property and we can do it. So what can I do on a personal level? Is it talk the bloodlines of these dogs, or just take a pointer to a show and tell? I was in public education before Anna Catherine was born for 15 years, and I was a PE and health teacher before I became an administrator. So you got these career days. Get plugged in with your 4-H's, your schools, your youth organizations, and big shout out to the Youth Field Trial Alliance, Chris Mathen again.
Yeah.
And that's a Southeast thing, and I think there are other places that are having youth days, and not just in our world, but lab people are doing it too, and that's great. That's it. And capitalize on your strengths though, because and you and I have talked about this, and I think you're brilliant at interviewing people, and I just would run out of questions, but I could probably talk to you for 6 more hours. And you rock it. And there are people that do the website, and Brad Peterson is in graphic design, and he just helped me with a logo for West Kentucky Field. He's a setter guy.
Yeah.
He's a bird dog guy.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Design. Setter guy, good at what he does. That's just the way it goes.
Oh man, I just gave you too much to run with on that one.
I'll get the pointer hate mail all week next week.
It's organic. It has to be. And as much as you and I want to burn up the road and put miles on trucks and trailers, like, you got to do something at home.
Yeah.
You got to do something in your backyard, and then open the world up to people. And not everybody is going to be related to Mike and Jim Krause.
That's right.
And that was a blessing, or a gift to me. And I just didn't know it. And I've certainly realized it in the last 10 to 15 years. I'm like, this is something. Because you, as a kid, you're just like, yeah, everybody does this. And then you say field trial, and people look at you like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
so
it's a long
it's got to be that organic thing. And
try explaining to people why you have pigeons in a coop in your backyard. It's just, I lose so many friends, so many potential friends, just at the question of, what in the heck do you have pigeons in your backyard for?
That is the one thing my girlfriend Sarah will not do. She said, I'll do anything for you, but I'm not helping with the pigeons.
Well, we're growing the sport by doing things like this. And I just think we have to make it more visible and more palatable to the working person. We have to find a way to get our blue-collar people, our family people, our modern, man and woman trying to make their way in this world with the cost of living going exponentially higher every year. We got to metamorphosize. We have to evolve this to a sport that's more palatable and more approachable to those demographics and those people. And
absolutely. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I apologize, but I want to get this out before I forget. But the thing is, it's from the judge's seat where this clicked for me. I'm judging a Sharp-tailed championship. I've got James Cleve, who's a pro, and I've got I can't even think of their names, but really nice local people that have one dog that live in the house with them that sleeps on the couch. So what I have to do as a veteran, I guess, to the game is I have to recognize the difference between that pro and the guy that this is my one dog. This is my dog. And when you are trying to help someone understand and grow in the game, the conversation that I have with James Cleve is vastly different than the conversation that I'm having with the gentleman who lets his dog sleep on the couch, because that's his baby.
Naturally.
And you want him to appreciate the sport, but also you want him to know that you respect his dog and you respect him and what he's doing with it. Because those guys will win championships just as quick as anybody else.
No, you better fear the guy with the pickup truck and the dog box, because
that's right.
There's one or two dogs in there that have had a lot of boot leather put on them, and they are dangerous.
Right. That's right. And they're there for the dog. And I think that, I can use James because we're friends and he knows I'm cheering for him too. But it's just a different scope.
Yeah.
So you have to understand and appreciate that when you go to have those conversations, but those are the guys you want out there, and get them there.
Well, we all can play in the same arena. It's just a matter of getting together and make it happen, and finding the niches in the type of dog you like, and then finding that environment to get involved in. But we, along with your trial and a lot of the NBHA trials, we have our share of new trialers, Mary Sue, and somebody like you that knows the trial life from day one of your life pretty much. What advice do you have for new trialers, the guys that are just getting started, the gals that are looking out and they want to get their dog into more competition and they're losing hunting, or they just want to extend their season? What advice do you have to those people?
Well, everybody learns differently. So again, when you go to a trial, for me, if I were brand new, I would want to just go observe, like introduce myself, observe. And people are going to come up to you if you're the new guy to begin with. What can I do to help you? I've never been to a field trial where that didn't happen. But then once you see it and you can process it, then ask your questions, and you're going to see things that you find really fascinating. Go ask what's going on. Why is that happening? And then pick out 10 guys you want to watch or observe what they're doing to model yourself after, if that's the route you want to take. Or when you get to the trial, you're like, oh, well, this guy's scouting. What's he doing? Maybe I should try that first. And just do it. Like, get your hands dirty, get in there and work through it to find out what you like the best, or if you like it all the best, how can you juggle everything? How can you make it all fit together? And don't be shy about asking questions. I think we get, those of us who have been doing it for a while, we get kind of comfortable, and, you know, we look at the running order, and I'm the top dog, you're the bottom dog. So I'm going to have an orange collar, you're going to have the green or blue, whatever. But that kind of stuff has to be explained. And, you know, that's my advice to veteran field trialers. Like, it may be old information to you, but there may be that one person, like, we need to be sure that, you know, just like Ken Sauer did with you on your first podcast, explaining what's going on. Because even if you are old or a veteran, not old, nobody's old, you need to hear that just to be reminded, hey, this is how we do things. And when you have that order and that clarity of explanation, it's going to go better for everyone.
Yeah, and my advice is two sides of the same coin. If you're a new trialer, you've got to go. Like, you've got to get the knack to go find somebody that's got the in and go with them, or it may just be that you have to go on your own. And I know it can be a little daunting, a little intimidating. You pull up to the grounds, there's big rigs everywhere, horses standing there, dogs barking all over the place, and a lot of people in chaps that look like they know what they're doing. And you know, it can be a little intimidating. But the thing I tell people is, and I just told a guy this the other day, if you're new, don't leave the field trial grounds without somebody's phone number, because if you get somebody's phone number, it's mean you've connected with them, and now you've got a means through which you can contact them afterwards, and you can go back and you can find out more, and you can go to the next trial. But on the other side of that coin is, if you're somebody that's seasoned, you're a veteran, you're a trial regular, and you see somebody new, don't leave the grounds without that person getting your phone number. Now,
yes, I agree.
The connection there will be made, and it may just be fleeting, or it may be a lifetime friendship, but we have to disciple, and we have to shepherd, and we have to get new people. We may have to bum a horse, and we may have to lend a horse. We may have to let somebody ride our side-by-side. We may have to bring a side-by-side so somebody can rent. We have to extend the arm out and give somebody a leg up, and that's my advice. But Mary Sue, where do you see this sport? I'm thinking 10 and 20 years down the road. Is it going to look drastically different? Are we going to grow? Are we going to condense? Are we going to be riding spaceships or these like hoverboards that these kids have? And what's the sport going to look like in 20 years as we wrap up?
I sure hope there's a horse. I just love a horse, not because I don't like to walk, because I am enjoying that, but you know, Joe, that's a great question. And I think it's going to have to mend and mold and bend a little bit to, I think we're going to have some conversion. You know, some of our groups are going to have to come together. It's just like when I went to the Kentucky Field Trial Association meeting from Ohio Valley Circuit, we're in the same state. We got to get together, guys, you know, like, and I'm not saying that the way I do it is the best way, but we've got to work together. And I think it was Dr. Grant that said, you know, we might not have shooting in all eight. It might just be one. And that may be true. I knew you were going to ask me this, and I thought, well, I have a good answer. I really don't know, but I think it will still be going in some capacity. And for my sake and for your sake in Kentucky, our wildlife management areas, we have to, as field trialers, take care of and steward those areas to make sure we're saying to our state, hey, this is valuable to us. And that's true for every state that has that public use land, because in 20 years, it may be more private land. So when you get your 5,000 acres, you just call me, Hopkins.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'll be there ready to go. But that may be it. We might be on more private grounds in the future, but I think we're still going to be going. And I went to the Legends Luncheon at the Hall of Fame. Miss Tanya Brotherton puts that on. That's another woman in the sport that's doing great things down there at the Bird Dog Hall of Fame. And Miss Linda Hunt.
Yeah.
She said, she made a comment about how people say the sport's dying. She said the sport's not dying. It's just, it's aging. And we have to, as the aging, draw people in. And remember that enthusiasm. That's what draws people in. Even Joe, I've been in field trials in ice. I've been in field trials when it was 90 degrees. And I had a good time at every single one. But, you know, it's on us to do what has to be, do the next right thing. If it works for you to have a seminar in your backyard and let all your neighbors come pet your setters, then by God, have them over. If it doesn't, and you need to go help somebody at Berea do something with a kids group, 4-H, then that's what you do. You do what works for you. Right. and you just let people see how much you're loving it.
Yeah, that's really well said. Well, Mary Sue, I know 5 o'clock comes early for me. You've probably got an even earlier morning in the morning, but thank you so much on behalf of the MBHA and the field trial community for coming on and sharing your insights and your memories and your advice and stuff. And just thank you very much for being a guest on the Breakaway Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a conversation among friends, and it won't ever stop, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
That was the Breakaway Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please tell a friend, like, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms to stay up to date on everything National Bird Hunters Association and all other field trial related content. But hopefully, we'll see you next time at the Breakaway.